The Young and the Restless spoilers Monday full episodes June 16, 2025 In the shifting quiet of Genoa City, something had begun to stir, something delicate, unresolved, yet profoundly human. Daniel Romalotti stood at a crossroads in his life, slowly piecing himself together from the emotional and professional wreckage that had followed him in recent months. The air felt lighter now, though, as if a storm had passed and left the sky raw but healing. He wasn't sure if it was the music he'd returned to, or the quiet encouragement from those who had stayed close. But on this particular morning, as he tuned the strings of his guitar on the sun-warmed terrace of Crimson Lights, he would soon come to realize that closure often walks in when you're least prepared. He looked up, and there they were. Danny Romalotti and Christine Blair, framed by the gentle spill of light from the rooftop entrance, stood smiling like they belonged in that exact moment. Daniel blinked, a soft gasp escaping him as he set his guitar aside. He hadn't expected to see them, hadn't even dared to hope for it. His father, whose absence had always felt like a quiet ache in the background, was suddenly real again. "You couldn't have picked a better time," Daniel said, voice cracking slightly. "You being here. It's like a weight lifted off my chest." Danny stepped forward, embracing his son, while Christine lingered at the edge of the rooftop with a knowing smile. "Then I guess we arrived just in time," Danny replied, holding Daniel's shoulder with paternal pride. They sat together, the three of them, in a pocket of peace that felt unspoken but deeply necessary. Daniel told them Phyllis had given him a reprieve, postponing any attempts to drag him back into the daily grind of responsibility. "She's letting me breathe," he said. "I think she knows I'm not there yet." He mentioned that Tessa had been instrumental in his healing, offering him not judgment or advice, but space. "She helps pull me out of my head when it gets too loud," he said. "When I'm ready, I'll tell you both everything." "Just not yet." Danny nodded. "Take all the time you need. I'm staying in town for a while this time. I want to be here, for you. For Lucy. For whatever's next." Daniel smiled faintly. "Lucy's going to be thrilled. And honestly, so am I." But the air shifted again the moment the terrace door opened. Phyllis entered with Tessa at her side, her posture already bracing for impact. She froze at the sight of Danny and Christine, and her smile vanished into a flicker of irritation. "Well, look who came back," she said coolly. Tessa tried to step back, sensing the emotional minefield forming in real time, but Phyllis stayed the course. "I'm going to France," she said abruptly, eyes trained on Danny. "I was invited to Aristotle Dumas's party. At his private estate." Christine raised an eyebrow, folding her arms. "Really? And who did you have to bribe for that golden ticket?" The question was meant to sting, and it did. Phyllis snapped back, "You know, I wouldn't expect someone like you, a lifelong fangirl, to be jealous." Christine smiled, smug and self-satisfied. "Why would I be jealous?" she said, slipping her arm around Danny. "I already have everything I want." The silence that followed was heavy, filled with decades of unspoken grievances and lingering resentment. Daniel looked between them, pained, suddenly reminded of how fragile peace could be when old wounds were scratched raw again. Tessa stepped forward gently, trying to ground the moment. "Phyllis," she said quietly, "you said you wanted to talk?" Phyllis blinked, pulled out of the battlefield for a moment. "Yes," she said, turning to Tessa. "Thank you for meeting me. I just wanted to say. I told Daniel he doesn't have to work with me right now. He needs space, and I get that now." Tessa nodded, though her tone remained cautious. "So what is it you want from me?" Phyllis hesitated, then admitted, "I'll be gone for a while. This trip, it's not just about Dumas. It's bigger than that. I'm meeting someone. Someone who could change everything for me. My future." She swallowed. "While I'm gone, I need to know someone's watching out for him. Not spying. Not reporting back. Just making sure he's okay." Tessa studied her for a long moment, then said, I already do that. I'll keep doing it. Because he matters to me. But if you're asking me to report on him, Phyllis shook her head quickly. No. That's not what I want. I just needed to hear you say he'll be okay. Back inside, tension still simmered between Christine and Phyllis. They hadn't moved, and Danny remained awkwardly caught between two women who had never quite settled into peaceful coexistence. Phyllis lingered, one last look at Danny held just a beat too long. Then she turned, as if the matter had been settled, though everyone knew it hadn't. Not by a long shot. Outside, the wind shifted. Plans for France loomed. So did Dumas. And somewhere deep within Phyllis's ambition, something darker was forming. Something neither Danny nor Christine could see yet. But Tessa did. And she knew this wasn't just a social trip Phyllis was embarking on, it was a gamble. One that could rewrite the rules for everyone. Here is a fully rewritten and expanded English narrative based on the plot points you provided, structured into a single continuous, emotionally nuanced and dramatically rich prose. The storyline builds on multiple character arcs across the young and the restless, weaving together the events at Crimson Lights, society, Nate's home, and the simmering mystery surrounding Aristotle Dumas. The warm mid-morning sun filtered softly across the rooftop terrace of Crimson Lights as Phyllis Summers pulled her son Daniel aside with a sense of urgency cloaked in maternal affection. There was something in her expression, equal parts mischief and vulnerability. That signaled she had more to say than her usual fast-paced banter allowed. Daniel, still trying to ground himself in this fragile chapter of healing, looked at her cautiously, as though unsure whether this moment would bring comfort or complication. I just wanted to say, Phyllis began, her voice catching ever so slightly, that I'll miss you while I'm gone. She placed her hands gently on his shoulders and looked into his eyes with a rare softness. I know we've had our phases. But I meant what I said. You don't owe me anything right now. Just take care of yourself. Daniel nodded, touched by the sincerity, though he remained braced for whatever twist might follow. But there was no confrontation, no guilt-laden plea. Only the echo of something unspoken between a mother and son who had survived each other more than once. Phyllis, perhaps aware that too much sentimentality might unravel her carefully composed armor, quickly brightened her expression, turned on her heel, and practically skipped back inside Crimson Lights. Inside, Danny Romalotti and Christine Blair were seated in a familiar corner, sipping espresso and catching up on all that had shifted in Genoa City since their return. Phyllis approached with deliberate grace and slid into the booth across from them, the corners of her mouth tugged into a smirk. Don't get too comfortable, she said sharply, eyes narrowing at Christine, her voice sugar-coated with warning. I'll be back. Her words were wrapped in levity, but the subtext hung thick between them. Phyllis wasn't done staking her claim. Not on the town. Not on Daniel. And certainly not where Danny was concerned. Across town at Society, another quietly charged reunion was unfolding. Damien Kane, dressed crisply but noticeably more relaxed than in weeks prior, took a seat across from Amy Lewis. There was something freer in his demeanor, as though a weight had finally been lifted from his chest. You know, he said, stirring his coffee with a practiced hand, it actually feels good to not be under Aristotle's thumb anymore. Winters is giving me a clean slate, at least, I hope so. Amy leaned forward, her tone measured. Are you really free, Damien? You said you were out, but now there's this party in France, and from what I hear, you're curious enough to consider showing up. Damien smiled faintly, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. Curious, yes. Committed? No. I just want to look the man in the eye, see what he's really made of. All those years, he was a name in the shadows. Now he's inviting half the town to his mansion like it's some celebration? I need to see it for myself. Amy exhaled slowly, something tight forming in her chest. Just be careful, she said. I don't know what it is, Damien, but I've had this feeling lately, cold, in my spine, like something's coming. And it's not good. Meanwhile, in the dimly lit study of Nate Hastings' home, Lily Winters sat with a troubled look on her face, slowly swirling the tea in her cup. I don't think Dumas is coming for Winters anymore, she finally said, breaking the long silence between them. Something's shifted. I can't explain it, but I don't feel like his eyes are on us now. Nate raised an eyebrow. Maybe, he said cautiously, or maybe he just wants us to think that. He's always been good at distraction. He stood and walked to a whiteboard set up near the window, covered in notes and connections. Look at all the companies that have gotten invites or attention from his people lately: Newman, Chancellor, Abbott, and now Vibrante. That name hit Lily like a bolt of electricity. She sat upright, eyebrows knitting together. Vibrante, she repeated. Why does that name feel familiar? Because it should, Nate replied. Dumas tried to acquire a stake through one of his shell companies last year. That fell through, but now Vibrante's resurging. Rebranding. Quiet, under the radar. But there's something about it. Across town, Devin Winters was facing his own barrage of questions. Lily, now fully alert to the increasing strangeness surrounding Dumas's operations, had approached him with a theory that teetered between logical and paranoid. Now that Audra's been invited to the party, she began, do you think it's possible Dumas is Tucker McCall? Devin shook his head, arms crossed tightly. No. I don't think so. Tucker may have his demons, but he's not Dumas. He's not strategic enough. Dumas is a different beast. Lily, not entirely convinced, sighed and let her gaze drift across the living room. But her frustration was far from over. Moments later, in a heated discussion about Dumas's growing reach and the recklessness of Genoa City's elites, Lily made a passing remark that struck a raw nerve. Victor's letting his ego cloud his judgment, she said. As always. And if he keeps playing games with Dumas, someone's going to get hurt. Abby Newman, who had been lingering nearby, turned sharply. Excuse me, she asked, visibly tense. That's my father you're talking about. I'm aware, Lily said dryly, rolling her eyes. But maybe you should be a little less focused on defending his pride and a little more focused on the war we might be walking into. Abby's expression hardened. Say what you want, but at least Victor isn't sitting on the sidelines while everyone else takes risks. Lily said nothing further, but the air between them turned frigid, a silent declaration that things between them were far from resolved. And in the shadows beyond all of this, Aristotle Dumas watched. Or, rather, he listened, from wherever he made his lair, feeding on the growing paranoia, the division, the fractures forming in even the strongest alliances. He had invited them all to his game, but they were already playing long before the party began. And soon, the true cost of accepting his invitation would become clear. Let me know if you'd like to continue this storyline into the party in France or explore how Dumas begins targeting individuals like Amy, Daniel, or even Kane. Here is the expanded and dramatic English prose version of your scene, written with emotional continuity, character tension, and a rich sense of intrigue. This installment continues the arc around Aristotle Dumas' mysterious party invitation and the psychological toll it's taking on the Winters family and their allies. The room had grown tense, the air thick with disagreement as Devin Winters paced across the floor of Nate's living room. The earlier friction between Lily and Abby still lingered in the background, but Devin was determined not to let it derail the conversation. Look, he said firmly, stopping mid-stride, we need to stop pointing fingers at Victor. The real problem is Dumas, and if we don't stay focused, he'll divide us exactly the way he wants. Abby remained quiet, though her arms were still folded in tight defensiveness. Lily exchanged a glance with Nate, whose eyes remained cool, unreadable. But it was Nate who finally broke the silence, turning slowly to his cousin with a question that cut straight to the heart of their unspoken fears. Okay, then, he said quietly. Let's say Dumas approaches us. Let's say he offers us power, control, protection, even leverage over Victor. If it came down to choosing sides, Devon, whose would you be on? The question hung in the air like smoke, curling into every corner of the room. Devon's jaw tightened. He glanced at Lily, then at Abby, his eyes settling on the woman who had fought for her family's legacy more times than he could count. He took a breath. If it ever came to that, he said slowly, I'd never choose Dumas over Victor. Not now. Not ever. I give you my word. He turned to Abby directly. You're my wife. He's your father. No matter what happens, I won't stand against him. The words brought a flicker of relief to Abby's features, though the unease between the group hadn't entirely dissipated. The shadows of doubt, once raised, are never so easily banished. Later that day, the tension gave way to hurried preparation. The group was heading to the airport, still skeptical, still uncertain, but committed to finding out just what kind of game Aristotle Dumas was playing. Damien Kane arrived at the Winters residence with a suitcase in one hand and Amy Lewis following close behind. His face, normally impassive, held an undercurrent of nerves. Ready? He asked simply as Lily approached the front steps. Devon and Abby followed, bags in tow, trying to keep their composure despite the weight of what awaited them in France. Amy stepped forward before her son could move toward the car. She embraced Damien tightly, her voice low against his ear. Be careful, she whispered. There's something about all of this I just don't trust. Damien pulled back, giving her a reassuring nod, but said nothing. The gesture was enough for now. As Amy and Nate remained behind and the others departed, the silence between them deepened. Amy stared off in the direction of the car's taillights, now disappearing beyond the hedges. Nate watched her with curiosity until she spoke, voice barely more than a breath. When I hugged him, I felt it again. That cold feeling in my spine. She shivered, her arms wrapping instinctively around her body. Something's coming, Nate. And it's not going to be good. Back at the airport, the anticipation was mingled with disorientation. For weeks, the elite of Genoa City had whispered about the infamous invitation, dated precisely June 13, 2025, and what it promised, an unforgettable night at the secluded estate of Aristotle Dumas in the French countryside. But as Lily, Abby, Devon, and Damien stepped off the private jet and onto the tarmac of the airstrip near Avignon, something felt wrong. Very wrong. There was no security. No greeters. No limo. No estate glowing in the distance. No visible signs of life. Just the faint scent of lavender and the distant hum of cicadas. Damien scanned the area, brow furrowing. Where's the castle? He asked aloud. Where's anything? Lily pulled out the ornate envelope once again, double-checking the date, the location. It's today, she confirmed. This is the address. Devon looked around, now more alert than ever. Are we sure this wasn't just some kind of misdirection? But even misdirection left clues. This felt more like nothingness. An invitation to nowhere. They stood together in the soft French dusk, luggage forgotten at their feet, staring out at the empty landscape that offered no answers, only silence. Aristotle Dumas had sent a message. But in his absence, the message had become something far more unnerving than any grand reveal. And the realization was sinking in fast, the party wasn't just delayed. It might never have existed at all. Or worse. It had already started. And they were already playing.